to ENT News. My name is Eric Rennie, and today we will be discussing the Gravesend Inn, a haunted hotel. Joining me today is Todd Robbins, a performer and artistic director who specializes in all sorts of arcane forms of entertainment and amusement. Thank you for being here today, Todd.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
Us too. So my first question for you is, can you explain to those watching what the Gravesend Inn, a haunted hotel, is?
Sure. The Gravesend Inn is a project that has been going on for about 21 years, every fall at about this time, at the Voorhees Hall, which is the building where the entertainment tech department is of City Tech. And very simply, it is a haunted house, a high-tech haunted house. Most haunted houses have like dozens and dozens of actors. There's only 3 that are involved in this, and the rest are crew, the students that put it all together and run this high-tech haunted house that uses technology and animation and all kinds of stuff to scare the daylights out of you. Unfortunately, this year, because of the situation, there will be no Gravesend Inn in person, and they're kind of retooling everything. And hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be back next year in the fall of 2021, and bigger and better than ever.
And what exactly do you mean when you say that you specialize in all sorts of arcane amusement and entertainment?
Well, I've done a number of kind of strange, unusual entertainment forms through the years, kind of things from the past that you don't see that much these days. Magic, which is still very popular, and seances and things like that, and sideshow also, and we're doing things like this. Things like that, sword swallowing, fire eating, and all kinds of strange, unusual acts like done out in places like Coney Island, and that's sort of my specialty.
Great, that was a really cool trick, by the way.
Thanks.
What role do you play in the creation of the Gravesend Inn?
Well, I am the artistic director. As I mentioned, it goes back about 21 years now. And it was started by the 2 heads of the department, Chip and Norma, and as a project for the students, something for them to work on during the fall. That was not only educational, but also a lot of fun for the public. Who doesn't love a spooky haunted house? And Chip and Norma retired last year, and they needed someone to kind of come in and spearhead it, sort of guide it to the future, and that's my role.
Great. Can you tell viewers about how the Gravesend Inn is operating this year due to COVID?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it is not happening in person. The Voorhees Hall is closed down, the facilities. There's no in-person learning. It's all being done remotely, so there was no way of building and doing all that's required to make the inn happen. However, the students have gotten together with the faculty, and they've decided that they're going to keep the spirit of the Gravesend Inn alive with an escape room, an online escape room. And so that is going to premiere in the beginning of November, and I believe there's going to be another broadcast that's going to promote that. And it's going to be great because you will be trapped in the haunted halls and rooms of the Gravesend Inn, and the question is, will you ever get out?
We look forward to that. Other than the Gravesend Inn, what other projects have you worked on or are you currently working on?
Well, I've done, let's say, a lot of strange things. I've done a couple of off-Broadway shows. I did one called Carnival Knowledge, which is about the sideshow. I also did one called Play Dead that I wrote with Teller of Penn & Teller, and he directed me in it. And from that, I got a TV series that was called True Nightmares, and I did a couple seasons of that on Investigation Discovery, and it was all true, disturbing stories.
So I've heard you're known for telling some disturbing, interesting stories that about things people can't believe happened. Mm-hmm. Would you mind sharing one with us today?
Sure, I'd love to. And the great thing about the true stories, unlike a ghost story, is very simple. When you tell a ghost story, it may scare the daylights out of people. But, you know, there's something in their mind that tells them in the back of their mind that what they're seeing probably didn't happen, isn't true. And that lets people off the hook. And I don't like to let people off the hook. When you tell these true stories, they happen. They really happen. And since they happen, they might happen again. And this time they might happen to you. And that's the great thing about it. So let me just tell you a quick story and also do a little performance while we do this, if I mind. It's all about making choices. We all make choices. I made a choice to be here today. You made a choice to have me on the broadcast here. So we're going to do a little something. I need you to make a choice of a card. Eric, and we're using a regular deck of cards. I know it's kind of sus, and but it's a real deck, no cap. And so very simply, what I'm going to do is just go through the deck one card at a time, taking one card off the top and putting it on the bottom. And at any time, Eric, make a choice and say stop, and that will be your card.
Stop.
All right, stop. Well, fine. Let's see what. Oh, that's a good choice. It was a very good choice. The Queen of Hearts. That was a very good choice. Andrew Kaczynski and Robert Young Jr. made a choice. Unfortunately, they made that choice on the night the vampires were out for blood. The vampires I'm talking about was a Puerto Rican street gang from the Upper West Side, and the night they made that choice was August 29th, 1959. The vampires had showed up to Hell's Kitchen, to a playground, empty playground, where they were going to have a gang fight, a rumble with a rival gang called the Norsemen. But the Norsemen never showed, and this pissed off the vampires, especially their leader, a fellow by the name of Salvador Agron. Salvador Agron was a 16-year-old bad seed who was known as the Cape Man. And the reason it was called that is because he often wore this long satin cape. I mean, when you are the head of the vampires, you got to dress the part, you know. And so they were there. They had chains and knives, and they were ready for the fight, but there was no one to fight. Unfortunately, about the same time, Andrew Kaczynski and Robert Young Jr. made a choice. They were coming home from a movie in the Times Square area, and they made the choice to take a shortcut through that playground to get to their home on 46th Street. They never stood a chance. As soon as they walked in, that gang jumped them, threw them down, kicked them, beat them, then held them up and turned them around. And Salvador Agron, the Cape Man, stood there, took out a dagger and stabbed the two young teenagers in the heart. They then let the kids go, and they staggered out onto 46th Street and dropped to the ground and bled out. And the sinister history of Hell's Kitchen that night became a little bloodier. The vampires took off, but it wasn't very long before the police caught up to Salvador Agron, arrested him, and he was convicted of murder of the two teenagers. He was supposed to be given the death sentence, the youngest person ever to be given the death sentence in New York. However, that didn't happen. Robert Young, the father of Robert Young Jr., and Eleanor Roosevelt, the former First Lady, petitioned the court for leniency, and his death sentence was commuted to life in prison. And he ended up actually turning his life around, Salvador did, and he got out of prison and became an anti-gang violent advocate. There's a little bit of irony to this whole thing, because on that night, August 29th, 1959, just 2 blocks away from that playground where this heinous act was going on, there was a musical on Broadway. A musical, the 4 Pomeranians of the apocalypse here. The musical called West Side Story was playing. And on that night, a whole theater of sophisticated theater goers were applauding the singing and the dancing that depicted savage gang violence, while at the same time the same thing was happening just 2 blocks away. It was mayhem, very much like what we have here. We all make choices, and everyone in that story made a choice and ended darkly. You made a choice. You made a choice, Eric, and of this card, and it was a very nice card, the Queen of Hearts. I also made a choice to be here today and also to wear this outfit, which includes this little pocket square, which happens to be a handkerchief that has depicted on it a playing card, the same one you selected.
Correct.
Choices.
Well, thank you for being with us today, Todd. Do you have any closing remarks?
Well, yes. At the Gravesend Inn, there is a portrait of the founder of the Gravesend Inn, Sir Jasper de Gore. And like all art, it speaks to me. It speaks to everyone that looks at it. However, this painting speaks to people in a slightly different way if you look at it long enough. I think you'll understand. So take a look at the the portrait, and there might be a little message that comes through.
All right, we'll take a look in a few seconds. Thank you to our viewers for joining us today. If you like what you see, like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm your host, Eric, signing off. Join ENT News next week when we host musical guests with your host, Amar Santos. Stay tuned for a word from Lord Jasper de Gore.
Welcome, foolish mortals. I am Lord Jasper de Gore, and it was I that built the Gravesend Inn, that haunted hotel, yes? I built it back in 1878 on cursed soil. And though the building is no longer around, long gone, its evil shall never die. Every year at Halloween, it reemerges from the darkness in order to consume the souls of visitors like you. But alas, this year, 2020, the blood moon will not be rising. The malevolence required to resurrect the Gravesend Inn is being used elsewhere in our world. Perhaps you've noticed, yes. So it will not be clawing its way out of the grave this year. But do not shed a tear, foolish mortals, no. We'll be back next year, 2021, right around Halloween time. And I guarantee you the ghouls and demons that forever reside in my hotel will be so very hungry. They'll be ravenous. They'll be filled with overwhelming desire to consume your soul. So mark your calendars and join us Halloween time, 2021. And I guarantee there will always be a vacancy for you at the Gravesend Inn.